Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today titled Self-Care in Stressful Times. And isn't it? My name is Melissa Tupay-Laforge, and I'm the Manager of Professional Development at CBIE, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. Now, just before we begin, before we dive into the presentation, I'd just like for us to take a moment to recognize that CBIE in Ottawa is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. We acknowledge and pay tributes to all Aboriginal people who live either in Ottawa or elsewhere in Canada and beyond. We honor their courageous leaders of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Today's presenters are from Niagara College. Niagara College acknowledges the land on which they gather as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live and work there today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampun Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. And this acknowledgement reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and the friendship of Indigenous peoples. Some housekeeping before we jump into the presentation. We have a control panel that's located on your screen, and from there you should see that you have a microphone that your microphone is automatically muted. We have almost 300 people on this webinar today, and so everyone is muted for the sake of being able to hear what's going on with the presentation. At any point in time during the discussion, if you want to speak up, and if you have a microphone, you can raise your hand. You should also see the little hand on your control panel, and I will gladly unmute you so you can speak to everyone. And please don't be shy. We encourage everyone to participate actively in this webinar today. If you have any technical questions, by all means, feel free to send it, or any other questions for that matter, feel free to use the question box, and I will gladly assist you with any technical issues as soon as I'm done with the intro. So just as a test before we begin, I'd like you to locate the hand on your control panel and just raise it so I can see some hands going up. Make sure that function is working. Excellent. Thank you so much. Perfect. And so just a quick overview of today's webinar. This webinar will examine the anxiety caused by this extraordinary situation, the COVID-19, and how stress can impact our physical, mental, and social well-being. We'll invite you to participate and share your personal experiences on how you're dealing with the situation, and we'll also suggest ways to improve your mental health. Strategies on intentional self-care and different examples of how to put together a self-care plan will be offered. And so we have Laura and Natalie that are our presenters today from Niagara College. Laura is an international student advisor since 2008, and she became a RISIA in 2016. She advises students on academics, immigration, and transition, and delivers the mental health first aid and self-talk suicide alertness to students and colleagues. Natalie began working for Niagara College as an ESL teacher in 2005. In 2017, she became the International Student Engagement Coordinator, and her responsibilities include orientation, student activities both on and off campus, the college's Global Connections program, as well as academic activities for the English for Academic Preparation program. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our presenters, Laura and Natalie.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hope you're doing well out there and trying to adapt to this very unusual time that we're experiencing together. So our learning outcomes today, we would like to review the impacts of helping and then learn the A's of taking charge of stress, and then do some practice creating intentional self-care plans so that we can reinforce the capacity for our own self-care and for the community of caring. And we'll move on to the next slide.
Okay, so to begin with today, we just like to do a little bit of an introduction. Thank you, Melissa, for the introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about ourselves and how we are doing in this particular situation. And then we have some poll questions to kind of get an idea of who's out there, who's listening, and how they are working through this particular situation we all find ourselves in, this virtual remote learning and working situation. So on our next slide, we are looking at an introduction. So Laura, if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. As Melissa said, my name is Laura Fakla, and I have been working with Niagara College in the International Department since 2008. Some years back, we were introduced to our department mental health first aid, which we participated in as participants to get trained in this. And thereafter, I really fell in love with the program and wanted to deliver mental health training to my colleagues and then recently to students. I believe that we all have the capacity to take care of ourselves, and that our wellness, though, is so intimately joined between our mental, our physical, our spiritual, and our social well-being. In times like this, we really need to pay attention to those aspects of our health. And Natalie, would you like to go with your introduction?
So my name is Natalie Boverhoff, and as Melissa said, I'm the International Student Engagement Coordinator. So in that role, I do a lot with students and all areas of students at our college. So our international students, but as well as our domestic students. We have a really close relationship with all of their areas of engagement at our college. So our student leadership and engagement area, our athletics, our student government. And so we find that we try to do as many activities as possible together. I also am a mental health first aid facilitator, and I have been doing that for just under a year now. And like Laura, I really feel that giving people the tools and the language to be able to identify their own difficulties in their mental health or physical health, as well as giving them the tools to ask questions and be able to take on that area of self-care. And I think it's so important both for our faculty, our staff, but also for our students, and particularly in a time like this. So for the next part of our introduction, we're going to talk a little bit about our current situation. And then in our next poll, we're going to ask you guys the same questions. So Laura, if you want to start us off with this activity, our self-check-in, using yourself as an example.
I sure will. So I learned this activity in a recent trip that I did, a student trip to Guatemala, and our organizers were asking us, what is our rosebud, and thorn with regards to the experiences we were having on this trip. So the rose, something going well, a rosebud is an opportunity, and a thorn is a challenge that we are experiencing. So we've been working remotely since since March 16th, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, so my rose is I get to work from home with my puppy every day. I love this little guy. So that's my rose from this experience. My rosebud is the opportunity to work remotely, actually, to be able to test out different ways to connect with students and colleagues. And those moments when I do get to connect with people remotely is really quite special now. And a thorn is sometimes my puppy as well, because he wants to sit on my lap at every opportunity. Natalie?
Excellent. So my rose, something going well. On a similar level, I'm at home now with my 3 children, ages 10, 9, and 5. And so something that I think is going well is getting to actually walk with them through some of the learning that they're doing. If anyone knows me, they know that I very much like schedules. And so I have made a schedule for my children, all their academic learning times, and being able to work with them on that has been great. An opportunity, again, I think using technology in a different way and being able to connect with our students, not just at the college or on a trip away from the college, but right now we're experiencing different ways to connect with our students when they're at home, which gives us a different type of access to our students. So I think that's a great opportunity, even once we're back on campus, looking at being able to do sorts of activities in a remote and using different platforms, I think will be great. And a challenge, oh, I know that probably everyone's thinking there's a lot. I'm going to pick what might seem silly to some, but working from a laptop has been a huge challenge for me. I'm used to my office with my double screens. And so I think there's just some things that I'm used to being able to do very, very quickly that suddenly are taking a considerable amount of time now. And that can be frustrating.
Yes, I will add one more challenge was to find a comfortable place to work. I really do appreciate my ergonomic desk now. I've since found out that the most comfortable place for me to work is either sitting on my sofa or in bed, because I don't have my shoulders scrunched up to my ears in those positions. But you just don't get out of bed then, which is challenging. Yeah. So please go ahead and answer those that poll, and we can review that after we go through the next screens on the impacts of helping. So we'd like you to do the self check-in. Are you having roses, thorns, rosebuds, or are you unsure?
So Laura, just to let you know, we've got about 50% of all the participants have voted thus far, and that's about 50% of 300. So I'll give people a few more seconds just to, excuse me, pick the option or options. You can pick more than one, just by the way.
Okay. Will you let us know when we're back on?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah. So now I'm going to close the poll. We're at about 80%, and we'll share the results. Okay. Laura and Natalie, can you see the results?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Oh, perfect. So I'll leave it in your hands.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. It looks like we're all having a little bit of everything going on here. Some roses, some thorns, and some rosebuds. We'll revisit these later after we finish this first section to have a little discussion about these pieces. So we want to talk a little bit about the impacts of helping. So to start with, what drives us to be helpers? In our industry, as a student advisor, sorry, I gotta make this screen bigger so I can read it. We have these qualities that drive us to want to help. We are caring. We want to support. We want to challenge our students. We want to nurture them. We want to build relationships. We want to empower them, motivate and encourage. And one of the you know, I can say from my role, the greatest pleasures I have is to see the light go on with a student, that they're able to take care of things on their own, because I know that I won't always be there as their advisor. Our commitment to our students and their success, and our colleagues and to our institution. We want to be inclusive. I think that's a hallmark of international education in itself. We are professional and we have integrity, and we have a lot of respect as helpers of other cultures, of other people's values, of different points of view. And all of these things are great aspects of what drives us to be helpers. And doing this remotely is difficult, because caring often is something we want to do face to face. We want to be able to see the people, and that we want to see that light is going on when we see that moment of empowerment and make those connections. And it's particularly hard when we don't have those touch points. So then when we go to the next screen about the impact of caring, this is what it looks like in our everyday life, right? Not what we're experiencing now. And this is a model that Natalie and I looked at for this presentation. And there's different aspects of caring. There's on the positive side, the compassion, satisfaction. We get extreme pleasure from doing the work that we do, from knowing that we're helpful, knowing that we're caring for people. But on the other side, the things that we have to be alert to are the things like compassion fatigue, burnout, and secondary trauma. And I think to some extent, we're all familiar with these, even though we might not have always had the language around it. The compassion fatigue is those negative aspects, those or feelings from helping. Getting the same question over and over again from many different students, or from the same student. And, you know, it's natural to think, I've just answered that, right? And getting a little burnt, a little tired of it, right? And then having to check yourself to realize, okay, I'm just tired of this particular question, and I need to be mindful that the person on the other side is still struggling with understanding what I've been telling them. But then that bubbles over, and we're into areas of burnout, where you're starting to feel worn out, right? You're starting to feel that there's some hopelessness in what you're doing. It's just not effective. You're not being effective. The workings of the institution are hampering our abilities to be effective. And then the secondary trauma, and in my role, I'm sure as many other of you out there that are on the front line helping students, is they come to us with a lot of their personal stories, and it can get hard. You can really feel impacted by that. I know I've had helped students that have experienced loss, and that's really impacted me. I took that away from me, and recognizing that those stressful moments are making me sometimes feel, what am I going to face at work next? You know, what's the next thing that's going to happen? And Natalie will go into this more in the second half of this presentation, with particularly around that secondary trauma of being afraid of what might happen next in this situation we all find ourselves in. And then we look at the stress performance curve, and how there's an optimal level of stress, as you can see, that we're going to work well. Like, the stress is going to motivate us. We're going to be able to push forward. It's not going to get in our way. In fact, it's probably going to open some creative channels for us. But on the one side of that, if we're the green side, if we don't have enough stress, we're not motivated to work. But then we get over that curve and our stress becomes too heavy. And that's when we start to feel that fatigue, that exhaustion, some anger, frustration, panic, and then possibly breakdown as our stress gets too heavy. So it's important to recognize where we are on that curve and then finding that optimal level of where we work effectively. And then if we go to the next screen, we have another poll. We're going to debrief that poll now. So we'd like you to share some opportunities. There's an opportunity for you to participate in this discussion. What are some of the rosebuds that you've been having during this, the last probably 2 weeks of working remotely?
So if we can concentrate on what are some of the opportunities that maybe people never thought of, or realities that you're coming to that you can do from home that might be different, pardon me, from how you might have tackled something while working in the office.
So Natalie, what are some of your rosebuds?
Well, I guess from an activities point of view, or an engagement point of view, looking at different ways to utilize technology in order to get our students to engage. So, you know, the joke is when you're on campus and you want a large group of students, free food. And that's something that's definitely off the table right now in our current situation. So looking at how can we use technology or different technologies to still encourage our students to create a new type of community, to still have a touch point where we can all get together and we can make sure that we're all, you know, looking after our well-being. So that's definitely a rosebud for me. It's definitely a different way of looking at things that I never had to do before.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking the way we do business in general at the college and you know in our communities is significantly going to change after this with many more opportunities. And a rosebud I'm hoping for is more opportunity for different working arrangements when we do get back to the office. So maybe there might be days that we can opt to work from home or work outside the office because we now have been tested and shown that we can work remotely. And I know for myself, sometimes getting out of that office space gives me some more clarity and creativity. And I've had Zoom meetings with students that have worked effectively. So I'm wondering if anybody else is out there that has been able to share some of their rosebuds.
Sure, I'll read a couple of the answers that have come through, and by all means, everyone, feel free to raise your hand if you have a microphone and you want to share vocally. We invite you to do that. So I have one here. Finally, learning to work remotely, webinars for students, online appointments, etc. Saving money on gas. Rosebud is use of technology. Thinking of online engagement with our students. I'm just reading through them, of course. Having the time, having and taking the time to learn Microsoft Teams and video chat / meetings. Yes.
I'm wondering if anybody has a personal rosebud. So I pulled out workout videos and I started working out in my living room again. I haven't done them in about a year's time and I'm really enjoying it. So setting up a routine like that again for myself is definitely a rosebud. And what better time to develop the habit to continue when we do get back to the office.
Yeah, there's a couple of those in here. So there's lots of responses coming in now. So I'll kind of go through them a little bit quickly. So Rosebud, closer, more regular connection with team, becoming more tech savvy, flexibility between work and family, save the environment by not driving every day, learning stats with YouTube, scheduling flexibility, working in my gym clothes, working out during most work breaks. Give me time to pause first before answering questions and doing work. So I'm more thoughtful, less reactive, and less in this just get it done mode. How to communicate more effectively with staff members, providing additional leadership to teams and people I supervise. It has forced the university to set up for remote course delivery. Yeah, so there's lots coming through here. There's plenty, actually. I don't know if you want me to keep going, but there's quite a bit here. It's probably another 30 answers. Do you want me to get through them?
Oh, maybe we
Sure.
can.
Sure.
Yeah, Natalie and I always do this. We always say the opposite.
Well, maybe we can save some of them for some of our other debriefs when we talk closer to the end in discussion, and then we can just move forward a little bit. If
Okay,
that's
great.
just being cognizant of time.
Time, yes. We have lots of people on the line, so we can, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so moving ahead, now that we've kind of looked at the stress and the impact of caring and what stress that can bring, we just want to take a look at, and I'm sure many of you have seen this, and this is the mental health continuum model. And I know that like in our workplace, when we have our one-on-one meetings with our manager, we've actually started using this in those one-on-one meetings to kind of have a gauge of how we're feeling and how we're doing. And as you can see, we go from in the green, healthy, to reacting. So actually a little bit reminiscent of what some people just said, that this is now giving them a chance to pause instead of just automatically reacting. And sometimes when we're starting to lose our footing in our mental health and how we're doing, we start sort of reacting and not really putting a lot of thought into how or why we're doing certain things. It just kind of quickly happens into injured and to ill. And I won't go through all the different categories of that, but you can take a look. And so one of the questions we often pose is, how can we stay in the green, right? Whether I'm in the reacting stage or the injured stage, or if I've actually tilted over into the ill side of the continuum, what can I do? What are the steps that I can take to get me back up into the healthier side, into the green section of the mental health continuum? And one of the key things that we have often talked about and that really will help people is that intentional self-care. And so on our next slide, Laura's going to talk a bit more about the idea of self-care and how very different that is from intentional self-care.
Thanks, Natalie. Just to comment on the mental health continuum as well, it's an important thing to remember that to remind ourselves and to remind others that it is a continuum. We're not stuck in one place. And so when we are going into the red zone, is to remember that there is an opportunity to always move back to the green, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the element of hope that we always have to remember, that we're not always going to be stuck in the injured and red part of that continuum. And so how do we either stay in the green or move back to the green? One thing to think about is that idea of self-care and intentional self-care. And we throw those words like self-care around a lot. You know, what is your self-care? What are you doing for your self-care? And I think it's important to realize that what we really want is, what is your intentional self-care? And that means whatever you're doing, it's purposely done to take care of your own mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. And social health as well. When we look at what is the definition of health, it includes mental, emotional, and social well-being. So when we want to do self-care, it needs to be done with purpose to take care of those areas. It needs to improve our mood and reduce our anxiety. It should refuel us rather than deplete us. It's not something that's forced, and it's a choice. It's something that you've planned as a commitment to yourself. So I'll give you an example, ice cream. So, it might be your self-care to eat some ice cream today. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I really want some ice cream. That's going to be my treat to myself. And it's going to be my self-care. Now, thinking about that is how much ice cream you're going to eat, right? If you eat the entire box of ice cream, you're probably going to feel sick afterwards. So that's not really good self-care. Maybe eating a little bit of ice cream where you are savoring it, you've enjoyed the moment, you've tasted the flavor, you felt the coolness on your tongue, you've just enjoyed the look and the feeling of scooping out that ice cream and putting it into the bowl, and all those pieces of it are making you feel good. It's reducing your anxiety. It's taking you away to a place that's uplifting your mood. You've committed to it, but you're not overdoing it. It's not forced. And afterwards, you're not going to feel guilty because you ate ice cream. You're not going to feel sick because you ate too much of it. It's just going to be just that enough that you're going to walk away going, that felt good, right? And it's the same with possibly going for a jog or doing exercise. If getting to it or doing it is making you feel worse, then you maybe need to rethink, is this good self-care for me? Or am I doing it because I feel guilty, and if I don't do it, I'm going to feel more guilty, or just blah, well, I did it, now, I don't feel any better for it.
And another really key thing to keep in mind with intentional self-care is that no two people are going to have an identical plan when it comes to self-care. Your self-care is really going to be tailored to your life and what goes on in your life and your personality. And as Laura said, the things you look forward to. Using the ice cream as an example, if ice cream is something that you really love, but you know that sometimes you have a tendency to overindulge, then that becomes that piece of treat for you. But if I don't like ice cream, then it's not going to be a good reward for me. And I often, when I talk about this in my mental health first aid workshops, I talk to students, people always say, oh, well, exercise, that's self-care. Well, no, it's not self-care. If I hate exercising and I dread doing it, then going to the gym is probably not good self-care for me. But maybe what I would really enjoy is a tennis game with a friend, because that is exercise and social. And maybe I'm lacking in the social area. And so being able to put those two together, it now becomes not exercise, but yes, I get to go play a game and I get to interact with somebody not at work or not in my home. And so now it becomes something I really look forward to. And so a really key thing, regardless of how you go about looking at your self-care, planning your self-care, is that nobody is identical in their plan and in what they need to take care of themselves. So it's not as easy as just going to a website and going, oh, well, this says if I jog twice a week, then I'm doing good. Well, that might not be for you. So that's really important to keep in mind when it comes to self-care.
That's a good point, Natalie. Someone once told me something that I used to always encourage my mom to go and do something with me, and this person said once, like, Laura, maybe what you like and what seems interesting and fun to you is completely terrifying for somebody else. Like they would it's outside their comfort zone. So being mindful of that, and all of those websites that tell you to do things that are important for your self-care, is that the key things, is it going to reduce your stress, improve your mood, and refuel you? Right, so we're going to move on to our next poll question. So we want to hear from you. Do you practice intentional self-care? And be honest, is it intentional? Think about what you're doing.
Okay, so the poll is now up, and I invite everyone to go ahead and vote. I hope everyone can see it on their screen. It was a little glitchy in kicking off there, so hopefully everyone can see it now. Oh, nobody's voting. Okay.
I can see it on my phone.
You can see it? Yeah, I can see it too. So let's yeah, I don't want to fiddle around too much because I don't want to okay, so let me just see if I can restart this. We might lose it, unfortunately. Let's see if we can try again. Yeah, sorry guys, there's a little bit of a glitch here, and it's the poll is just closed, so I can't reopen it for some reason. So the question was, do you practice self-care? Was it always, sometimes, rarely, never, or unsure? So you can go ahead and type your response in the question box, and I can kind of do a quick gauge to see where people are at. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm seeing lots of responses coming in. So sometimes, always, sometimes, rarely, mostly sometimes, um, a few rarelys, and a few always. Someone said not enough. I agree, me too. I'm guilty of that. So yeah, we had quite a few responses. So it looks like the majority is sometimes.
Okay, that's a good start, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Natalie, what do you do for intentional self-care?
Well, later we'll get into the difference between our everyday life and right now. But I definitely I find that a good workout, getting a good sweat on, is definitely something that I need for clarity and for being able to sit. Most of my job when I'm not running an event is sitting in front of a computer, so I definitely find that I work best, and it refuels me and adds clarity for a good workout. And you, Laura?
I make sure I stick to my routine. I found that having a routine is really important for me. That way I do get the workouts done and eat properly and step away from my computer. And that's been really important since working from home.
So shall we move on to some self-care models?
Yes, let's do that.
So on the next screen, we're going to talk about what to consider with self-care.
Do you see the poll still?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. For some reason, hide results. It's not working. Let's see. Maybe we can just. You're just seeing the paused. Is that it?
We're seeing poll number 1. Yeah, and we're seeing webinar in progress.
Do you see self-care model now?
No.
Okay. All right. So let me just, it looks like I've got a little glitch here. So I apologize, everyone. I'm just going to close this and reopen it, okay? Because otherwise I think we might be stuck here. So apologies. Let's just do this again. There we go. Okay.
Excellent. There you go. Got to be creative and patient, right?
We got to be patient. Yeah, if we start hyperventilating, then it's not good. Okay, it's all yours, lady.
Part of the world we're living in right now. So, we have several self-care models that we're drawing from. This one are the dimensions of wellness, and on the one side, Natalie and I found the the dimensions of wellness on the University of Buffalo website. You'll get the link to that website in this presentation. It's a really good website that talks about self-care. And on the other side of the screen, this is something that some of you may have seen in the Keep Me Safe webinar last week, Friday, I believe. And it's the same concept with examples on it. And the dimensions of wellness is really looking at all of those pieces of what makes us well, right? So, you know, checking in with our emotions, our body, our spirit, our relationships, our work, and our mind. And sorry, I'm just going to go into my other screen so I can see it in a larger, because I can't see. So the examples that are given in Natalie, maybe you can see, because my screen is too small and I can't see anything. I should really wear glasses, but I refuse.
So you're looking at the example of self-care?
Yeah.
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 So for example, in our physical, so regular medical care, eat healthy, regular sleep, exercise, massage, physical intimacy such as hugs and holding hands. In our psychological, take time for self-reflection, therapy or counseling, meditation, a journal, a support group. Emotional, explore your hobby, cuddle with a pet, community engagement, practice self-love, cry, laugh. Our spiritual, practice forgiveness, spend time in nature, connect with the spiritual community, sing, dance, yoga, volunteer for a cause. In personal, so take time to plan and set goals, spend time with your family, learning a new skill, reading a book, taking time with friends, and reflecting on what makes you you and what makes you special. Professional, make sure you take your full lunch break, leave work at work, take mental health holidays, learn to say no, use your vacation time, and set boundaries.
So these are all great examples of the different areas that we need to take care of in our lives. The one that was about music and songs and dancing, that's actually something I put on my my routine, my morning routine now, is to get up and find a song to dance to. It helps me wake up, and it gets get your groove on, and it feels good. So so yeah, I'm trying to incorporate that into my self-care these days. So if we go to the next part about the debrief from the polls, so we asked you if you are doing any intentional self-care, feel free to share an example. So I've given you a couple of mine as my routine, and including putting on a good song in the morning to inspire me to get out of bed and start dancing.
So I invite everyone to, there's a few hands that have come up over the course of the last few slides. There's a lot of people to scroll through. So I'm just going to say the name of the person whose hand is up that I'm assuming wants to share. If not, you can just say no. So Andrew Dean, I'm unmuting you if you'd like to share. Go ahead. Okay, maybe not. Andrew, are you there? Okay, we'll just go to the next person. That's fine. Andrew, I will just lower your hand. And if you want to take the mic once again, by all means, just raise your hand once again. So if your hand is up, I will unmute you. Okay, I've got Michelle Scholdius. Let's see, the mic is yours. Michelle?
You've made me so French. Maybe I forgot the A in my mic, but that's okay. Yeah, for self-care, I used to rely on cookies, and I've had to stop my delivery of the Girl Guide cookies because I was over caring. And I don't know, probably everybody's heard about the quarantine 15, but I'm well on my way. and need to relax a little bit on that. I think one of the things that I've missed most in the transition to working from the basement from my office is that the old commute via our public transit system got me 2 miles of walking every day, which I am not getting anymore. And I need to really consciously build that in because I'm noticing the difference, right? I had a good 15-minute walk to the train in the morning that transitions you out of getting the kids ready for not going to school anymore and into going to work. And then the same thing coming home on the train with that walk gives me the chance to, decompress out of work and prepare for getting the kids from school that they're not going to anymore. So now we have this crazy luxury of being 24/7 with our spouses and kids that we really have to consciously find that time. And how do I build back? Not that I care about counting steps, but how do I build back those 2 15-minute sessions of just me and my sidewalk and whatever the weather happens to be at the time? But I think that's the big piece for me is making the time, not finding it. The time is there, is making the time to take those walks.
Yeah, and that's a great example with the cookies, as well as that intentional self-care is intentionally setting aside that 15 minutes for yourself to do something like going out for a walk by yourself. It's building that back in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have another person, Melissa?
We do, yeah. We have Charmaine Magumbi. Let me just go back up here. Charmaine, here we are. Charmaine, the mic is yours. Oh, it doesn't seem as though Charmaine can. Oh, there we go. You're on,
Can you
Charmaine.
hear me?
I can.
Hi. I guess I had a little issue with you wanted us to write in the information, and on my screen there is nowhere. I couldn't figure out how to do that, so I'm not sure
Charmaine,
what was happening.
sure. Do you see the question box
Um,
in the control panel? If you look at the tabs, one of them should be called a question, and if you just click on the little arrow, it'll expand that, and it'll allow you to type in some things and submit them.
I see. Okay, thank you so much. Figure that
You're
out.
welcome.
No, so basically that was my question, but then no, this is great. Thank you guys for organizing this. And yeah, just the technology. I have the same issues regarding working from home and working on my laptop, and like at college, I have 2 screens. Here I make shift with 2 screens, but then the one computer that I use, or the both of them together, they're very, very, very slow. And so to answer one question takes me so much time. And then also on top of that, at work, I have everything. If I need to get anything from IRCC, I know exactly how to get it and where to find it because I've put it as favorites. Here, it's so hard to do that. I at a loss as to maneuver how to get that done. So it's a bit frustrating in that way, to say the least. Yeah, but other than that, I do get out every day, go for a walk, consciously remembering social distancing, but also remembering to be courteous and kind, smile, greet each other. It's a stressful time for people. And so we need to be mindful of being kind to others. And that's so important. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. We have someone else here on the line. Okay, Charmaine, great. Joy, let me just find you again, Joy. Joy Andrews, I'm unmuting you now. You can take the mic. Go for it. Oh, whoops, wrong Joy.
I feel like a Fun with Flags episode with Big Bang Theory.
Oh, hi, this is Joy.
Joy.
Hi, Joy.
You know, I usually keep really busy in my extracurricular time, and that's part of how I care for myself. But of course, all of my group activities are canceled. And I was quite concerned about that because I do live on my own. I don't have children or a spouse with me or even pets. But I've found with social media, managing that well so that I'm connecting with people that I care about and love. And I'm actually finding that there's less fear of missing out. And so I'm really able to enjoy some of my personal things that I do at home, such as making music and that sort of thing. And my house is very clean too.
That's a great point, and we'll come back to that. I'm not sure why I'm echoing. But we'll come back to that in the next few slides when we talk about some self-reflection. I guess time is flying by. It's already 1:56, Natalie. So I think we should keep going, right?
Move on to section 2.
Sure.
Okay, great.
All right, so in section 2, we're going to look at the A's of taking charge of stress. So we're going to start just on the next slide with sort of a discussion of what the A's are and looking at them. So the first one, alter. Can we remove? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so the first one is alter. Can we remove the source of the stress? The next one is avoid. Can we say no to the source of stress? So is there a way to sort of remove it or say, no, I don't want to have that stress in my life? Next is accept. Can we accept it? Can we embrace the source of the stress and make it part of our lives or part of our current situations? And then finally, adapt. Can we change to incorporate the source of stress? So in our next poll, what we'd like to ask you is, have you used any of these 4 A's of taking charge of stress since you began working from home? So since the situation started. So again, please select 1.
So Natalie, which have you used?
Well, I'd have to say that I'm doing my best to adapt to the source of stress and incorporate the stress into my life. As I mentioned, I have 3 daughters who are all at home with me, and my husband's job is still considered an essential service. So for the past 2 weeks, from about 7:30 till 6 o'clock at night, it's just been the 4 of us. So working to adapt to my schedule and how that has to alter for their schedules, and so that they're able to learn and be productive, and I'm able to work and be productive, but that we still have time to enjoy each other's company in this rare time where it's not a vacation, but we get to see a lot of each other. So I'd say that adapting is really what I've been working on. And looking at the poll, it looks like a lot of you have been looking at the adapting as well.
Excellent.
Perfect. So moving on to our next slide, and looking at, we really want to take the current situation into consideration. So as we move forward in the presentation now, we want to examine the differences between what I'm going to consider our everyday experience versus our current extraordinary extra stress situation of the COVID-19 situation. So alter. We can't alter or remove the source of the stress, at least as far as the actual pandemic of COVID-19 goes. There's nothing we can do individually to remove that stress. We can't say no. We can't be like, nope, don't want this in my life, because again, that pandemic has happened, and so it's not a movable force. So that brings us to the next 2, and judging by the poll, I think it's probably the 2 that everyone sort of gravitated towards. So can we accept that the current situation is stressful? It is. It's stressful on many fronts. We're going to right now specifically look at how it's stressful from the workplace front and be able to function as a professional in our field. But can we change? And we can change our reactions and our behaviors, and that will change our perception of the situation. How can we go from, I can't deal with this, I can't see through it, to what can we change about our reaction behaviors to be able to work through the situation, which leads us to adapt. We can change in order to function in this current normal. And it requires us to adapt in all areas and not just how we work. We often, I think we're seeing a lot of sort of that surface, okay, well, I'm adjusting from 2 screens to 1 screen in my laptop, I'm adjusting from my office space to my dining room table or my bedroom. But I think it's really important, and we'll discuss this more as we move through, that it is a whole lifestyle change, not just work change. And I think as we learn to embrace that, we really will start that adaptation process in being able to survive this situation. So on our next slide is our next poll.
So does anyone want to share which of the A's they are using to cope with COVID-19? So we looked and we saw that poll again. A lot of people were using the adapt. Would anyone like to share what they've been doing?
I'll be looking for some hands going up or anything coming through in the question box. Okay, I've got one comment that came in. This person said, I just want to say I'm finding it very hard and stressful to even stay in this webinar. There's so many things to do. How ironic. It is, isn't it? Oh my goodness. I can totally relate. It's hard to shut things off and sometimes just focus on that moment. Okay, I've got Beth Donor. The mic is yours. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not the right. Okay, there we go.
Am I muted? Is that better?
You are on, Beth.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think for me, I've just been adapting that since this is the new norm, how can I just appreciate all the little moments? You know, just yesterday, my husband was doing yard work, so I went out and picked up leaves, and it felt so good to be out of the office space that I'm in and smelling the fresh dirt and just, you know, recognizing that everybody has an opportunity to find something that they can be appreciative of in that day. And with the reality that we're in, I'm actually concentrating on that to help me be in the right mindset. I've got 2 children, 2 boys who are 3 and 5, very active and a lot of fun. So, you know, it's just you have to be, as a parent, you have to be the kind of motivator of your home to keep everybody else positive. So yeah, that's my kind of thing that I'm trying to focus on.
Thank you.
Great, I've got someone else with their hand up. Sarah Gabor Martinez, the mic is yours. There we go, Sarah, go for it.
Hola, yeah. I think for me, adapting, the biggest challenge is I'm an orientation coordinator. I do global engagement for my university, and trying to create an online super engaging orientation right now for our summer students is my biggest challenge. So I have some video skill set, but try to show students a campus tour of our university on a dead campus is a little difficult. You should have seen me yesterday with my colleague filming the whole campus, trying to make it look very exciting with no students there. So that's been one of my biggest adapting challenges, but it's also been very exciting to really pushed me forward into learning some new skill sets that I didn't know I was capable of. So that's been kind of nice.
And that's interesting because if we flip back, or actually one of the screens that Natalie will get to, but that I talked to earlier was that stress curve, right? So it sounds like there's some stress of trying to figure out how to run orientation in the current situation, but then it's just enough stress that keeps you motivated and creative to move forward with it. So that's kind of that optimal stress level that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And it's really nice to just like be at home and not wear professional clothes all the time and just get my work done.
Yep.
Or
Yep,
I feel like that's the opposite for me. I feel like I am, that is one of my thorns. I am less motivated because I am not dressing for the office. And I feel like I as silly as it sounds, I feel like it has a big impact on my headspace when it comes to, you know, getting ready for work. It's part of my, as Laura said, my routine or my ritual of getting ready and being there. And when I'm home and I'm in my yoga pants and tank tops and I'm like, it's not work time. It's my time with my kids.
Natalie's very stylish too, so it's the thing.
I believe it.
My high heels are all just sitting on the shelves.
Yep. So let's
you can
move
still
on.
wear them. No one has to know.
True.
I've got a few people have just typed in. Do you want me just to read quickly some of the responses? Sure. Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so here, actually, speaking of which, I'm adapting my routine of waking up and pretending that I'm going to work. Purchase the right furniture, checking in on colleagues, setting up a specific place in my home where I only do work. Ironically, found it hard to work in a separate home office. My normal Joan involves a million distractions. Moving back to the kitchen actually reflects my normal better than separating myself away. Okay, interesting. I agree with that comment. I've been receiving several messages. I'm not sure. We have found news about the COVID-19 to be overwhelming after 8 hours. I try to shut it all down during the day and only watch news at night. I have to remove myself from the bombardment of news and just getting into music, house cleaning, working from home, playing with the cat, going for walks, etc.
And that
is, oh, sorry, one of those things, like the avoid, it's okay sometimes, like that is avoiding the stressor, which is the news. I found it very interesting that I thought I'd have the TV on a lot more in the background, and I actually have it off most of the day, which is quite interesting because when I come home at night from a regular day's work, that's the first thing that goes on is the TV for background noise, and now I can happily have it off for most of the day. So but it is avoiding that bombardment of news, which I think in some cases that's okay to do.
Okay. So we'll just keep moving along if you guys don't mind, just to make sure that we,
So we're just going to take this opportunity to revisit some of the things that Laura talked about in that everyday normal and looking at how that changes in a stressful time. So back to our chart of the professional quality of life. One of the things I really want to talk about is compassion satisfaction. And in some ways, this is almost a double-edged sword in this type of situation, because we still get pleasure from helping students, and perhaps there's even an increase in the satisfaction because now we are able to look at new avenues. And many of you have mentioned the learning new technology, looking at different ways of doing things. So in this area, we might actually see a sort of a spike of this satisfaction because we are finding new tools and we're utilizing new ways. And maybe there's new students that we are reaching that we weren't able to reach before because they're the people who didn't come into the office, but they might be the people who will sit quietly in on a Zoom or will write in questions depending on how you're communicating. But at the same time, I think we also see a decrease in the satisfaction because there's that distance now that's between us and our students and us and our coworkers. And so a lot of this, you know, I feel like this area maybe doesn't have as many bonuses as when we're in the office, because as people who care, and in what we do, a lot of us chose these jobs because of the interactions and the level of interactions we have with people, with students, and now we're kind of removed from that. When we take a look at compassion fatigue, again, we have increased areas. Actually, if we could go back, Melissa, we actually have increased areas of this fatigue, because now we're not just in our office, let's say from 8:30 to 4:30, but because of technology, we're almost around the clock. I don't know how many people I've talked to who've been like, oh, well, when I had that meeting at midnight with Sarah, this is what we were talking about. So not only does it feel like we're almost always on, there are also so many other channels that people can reach you through. Looking at, you know, you've got your MS Teams, you've got your Zoom, you've got these live webinars or go-to meetings, your pragmatic phone calls, WhatsApp groups. So all of a sudden, when you're gathering your information, when you're looking at the places that you're trying to help, or you're trying to get information to connect people to help, it almost feels like it doesn't end, because everything keeps increasing, or the different ways of connecting keep increasing as this crisis time continues. So that compassion fatigue, I think, is hitting us harder and faster than it has before, which of course, if we move into looking at the burnout, there's no break in sight, if that makes sense, because as we keep hearing more and more and more, or learning more about the COVID-19 and how it's impacting things, and the things that are closing down and the things that aren't closing down, it adds to that feeling of burnout, because it almost feels like we never get to finish helping somebody and being able to move on. I know that in what I do, some of my best feelings are when I've helped a student complete a task, or move on to another level of something, and it almost feels like we don't get that situation anymore. And I think that is leading to that feeling of burnout, because we never see the end, which leads us to that secondary trauma, which in the workplace, we may have seen you know, a couple of really bad situations or difficult times in a week, but now we're hearing about these losses everywhere. It's not just in the workplace, it's in our home life, it's at work, it's people's incomes, it's their freedoms. You know, we work with, Laura and I both closely work with students who work in our offices, and so you know, what is going to happen to their work jobs in our offices, what's going to happen if they can't pay their tuition, or what's going to happen if their off-campus jobs are closed because they were in hotels and restaurants and things like this. So all of the things that cause these stressors have compounded and increased, which if we look at the next slide, looking back at that stress curve, let's see if we can forward to the next slide. Perfect. Thank you. We see that almost nobody in our profession, I feel like, is in that inactive or laid back period. We're all kind of stuck now between exhaustion and anxiety of trying to do our best, trying to reach as many students as possible, but then at the same time, not necessarily having the answers to all the questions that our students have, and looking for, you know, we often get to be the people who either give good news or at least tell them where they can find the answers they're looking for. And currently, we're not able to do that. And then on a personal or professional level, we're lacking our usual routine. We're lacking our usual support system of being in the office. And all of these things now are impacting what maybe used to be our self-care, or what we were able to do. If I think back to the gentleman who said, you know, part of his self-care was that walk to and from his transit systems, and now that's completely changed. Well, that's what we're going to talk about sort of next, is what was good for you, or what helped you stay balanced, is now going to have to change to reflect the changes in your current situation, whether it's your work life or your home life or all of that compounded together. Which leads us to our next poll.
So compared to being at work physically, how is the current remote virtual situation impacting your well-being?
And considering in this, don't just think about the physical parts of your new workspace, but all that working remotely or virtually entails.
Okay, so we've got about 50% of people have voted thus far. Let's give it one more minute.
It's interesting, Natalie, when you were talking about the compassion, satisfaction, fatigue, burnout, and secondary trauma, just as you were talking, last week, the ISAs from the college did a group Zoom with students, and it was so lovely to see all their faces and just talk with them, and it was very satisfying. But then, I feel like I've gone through all 4 of those stages in a week. I get down to the secondary trauma. I just listen to the numbers of people that we're losing, and it impacts me, right? And we can't downplay that. Be mindful that we are all exposed to all 4 of these stages, and it could happen over a very short period of time or a very long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
So it's interesting to see that our largest answer here is that increases in some way and decreases in other ways. So when we debrief, we're going to talk a little bit more about those increases and decreases and what we're finding together. So if we look back at that dimensions of wellness again, and this is one of the models we'll talk about, and we'll send you an example of how to build a self-care plan using this model. But what's really clear here, because all these dimensions of our wellness are changing in our new situation, is that it's so important to not just adapt to the new work normal, but to adapt to everything that is impacting you. And so for an example I give here is if your usual job is fairly physically demanding, and so you're often on your feet, moving, lifting, walking, then your usual self-care model might have no physical aspect to it because you don't need it, because your day-to-day life takes care of that physicality. But now you're home, and all of a sudden you find yourself, what did the one gentleman say, the quarantine 15 instead of the freshman Frosh 15.
Yeah.
Well, now you find yourself, well, you're not moving for your work, and maybe you're not able to get out and move outside as much as you'd like, because maybe you're working from your dining room table, or you're looking after a spouse or children, and so you're not able to get that physicality. So that new dimension of self-care is going to have to reflect that physical aspect of your well-being where maybe it didn't before. We also want to look at some personality traits. So, there's so much to consider in this new situation. A way a person who's introverted and extroverted, they will react to this situation completely differently. Whether you're on your own with a pet, or on your own, or whether you've got your family in quarantine or social distancing with you as well. And then also even looking at your work and how much interaction you have with people on a day-to-day basis at work. And now that you're no longer at that work, how that decreases your interaction and what that's going to do and impact your stress levels as well. So all of these things, because they impact us, they're going to impact each of the dimensions of wellness. So I think that it would be a mistake to think that whatever you did for self-care previously or in the regular everyday situation is going to be the same type of self-care you need now in this situation. So let's take a look at those. If we get those answers for poll number 4 posted again, Melissa? So we can see that that increase and decrease is that largest, and you know, we've sort of got a tie between people who think that it's increased their stress levels and decreased their stress levels. So in our debrief, Laura, you want to talk about some of those questions?
Sure. Could we go back? Yeah. So, you know, for me, it's been very interesting. I'm an introvert. I do recharge on my own. I live alone. I just have my pet. And so this is not that hard for me, right? To be on my own. However, I have had some feelings that are surfacing that are causing me some discomfort. And you know, one of them is not being surprisingly connected to some people. You know, when I'm in the office, I feel that I often need more quiet time, or I don't need to get involved in things. But now that I'm sitting at home by myself, I'm wondering what's happening with my colleagues. Am I missing out on something? And that's kind of feeding some of my negative self-talk, that I'm being forgotten or I'm being left out. So so I'm paying attention to those, to what's bubbling up in me. And that's, you know, giving me time to, okay, what am I learning about myself working remotely? I like it. I can work remotely. I find it interesting to be able to connect with people in different ways, but I'm also surprisingly feeling that I'm kind of out here alone, right? Where maybe other people are connecting more effectively remotely, or more often than I am. How am I different in this current situation compared to before? That's what I'm still thinking about. What do I like and dislike in each situation? I like that I can work in my pajamas. I like that I have my dog with me all the time. But I also dislike that I can't have face-to-face conversations. But being mindful that I don't always want face-to-face conversations when I'm actually in the office. So that's kind of the irony I find myself in. And then, you know, number 5, what can I learn about myself by answering these questions? So that I'm a true introvert. But I still need that human connection, and having to find a way to do that, even though I want to be by myself, I still need to be able to connect with people virtually, and making time for that. So discussion time, I think we'll move on from that right now, because we're kind of running out of time. We'll come back to that discussion and maybe go into some of our models that we're going to share with you. So here's a list of these different self-care strategies that we found. The 6 dimensions wellness model, that we'll look at that in a second. Reframing our thoughts, so reframing that negative self-talk. Identifying what can be done in some areas that are in and out of our control. And Melissa, can you just go back to that last screen for a sec? And then developing a self-care plan. And we have examples of these to share with you. So the next screen is the a worksheet for the 6 dimensions of wellness. So basically, Natalie, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as somebody who used to teach ESL, I would say that I find this sort of the easiest way to look at your self-care, because basically, you know, it's got those areas that we've talked about previously, and then it asks you what is unwell in those areas, and then gives you an opportunity to kind of assess what you could do to correct that. And I think this is also a really easy way to kind of look at possibly what worked best for you before. And as Laura was reflecting, you know, that before in the office, often she didn't want to be part of conversations, and now that she's finding that she misses them. So like that's the area of that social, that relationship interaction. So with this model, because it really kind of pulls each area out and has you think about it, I find it's probably the easiest one for building sort of your first self-care plan. And you might write something down, go, okay, well, body, you know, depending on what you do for a living or how physically your work is, you might not think that you have anything that's unwell in that area in the previous situation, but now it may be. But you might also be finding the opposite is true. Now that you have time, somebody said they like to work in their gym clothes and work out during breaks. So maybe this is the best physically that you've ever been feeling because you're actually getting the most exercise possible. Well, then how is that going to change now when you go back into the work situation? So I think one of the key things we can all take from this current situation is, well, what are the good parts? And what am I finding better about myself now? And how can I move that back into my work life when we go back into the office? But so for this plan, it's really as easy as looking at those different aspects of your life and looking at what you think is wrong. And even if you are just able to do one little thing to try and fix or try and make that area better, then you know that first step is always the hardest. And so even if you can just build in that, you know, 10 minutes of singing and dancing in your living room to get yourself started for the day, or you know, that 10 minutes of alone time where it's not about work and it's not about cleaning and it's not about your kids, but it might just be about reading that book or that magazine or listening to that song. But that first step, you know, allows you to build more steps and more steps. So this is a great model for sort of that first run at, okay, well, what isn't working well in my life and what can I do to remedy that?
Excellent. The next model, this is just reflecting on some things that you can shift in different areas of your life, right? So what do you need as a personal shift? Like for me, now that I am really truly by myself, is how to build that support network around me and intentionally making time to get those connections. I find the time that I need connection more is when I'm frustrated and I need to vent, and those are the times that I feel most alone. So trying to figure out, you know, what I can shift, which is my tendency not to want to interact once I get home, is to shift that behavior into how do I interact from my home. What can we shift with our management style, for example, or what we need from our managers, our interpersonal shifts. So, you know, how can I again find ways to interact with my colleagues or with my students in my own space. And then, you know, in my environment, what can I control in my environment? What's out of my control? And how can I manage those things? The next one is reframing thoughts. Can we go to that one, Melissa? So this one is interesting. It's based on a cognitive behavioral therapy model, and it's just paying attention to what our thought is and recognizing how that thought kind of impacts what emotions we feel and how those emotions and thoughts drive our behavior, and how that could be just a vicious circle of you know, if I think no one remembers me, I'm going to feel maybe resentful. My behavior is not going to reach out to people, and therefore no one's reaching out to me, which then reinforces that negative thought in the first place. So how do I reframe that thought? And in the worksheet that you'll get, there's a whole bunch of steps that you can do, which comes down to is looking at the thought, reflecting on it, picking out some common thinking distortions around it, rewriting the thought, and then hopefully changing that behavior and emotional response to that thought.
Yeah, so that, Melissa, if you go ahead to the next slide, you can see what Laura just talked about, the kind of steps towards reframing those thoughts and how that impacts.
This one I found has been really helpful. I actually have an app on my phone called the Thought Diary, so that when I'm having a negative response to something that I don't like, that feeling that was brought up in me, I go back and reflect on it to see why I was thinking that way. It's been really insightful. And then the last one is a worksheet that we put together. And it's just my well-being checklist, and you'll get this in your package as well. And it's just, coming up with a routine for yourself of what you can do on a daily basis, and attending to those senses, like what you feel, that you feel on your skin or your tongue when you taste something, the sounds, the smells, the emotions that you have, and then developing perhaps a reflection on that rosebud sort of mentality, right? Like, what went well? What am I proud of today? What was a challenge? Recognizing that there's a challenge, and then also letting it go.
Which leads us to, because we are right on that line. I'm not sure if we have time to have any discussion, but one thing that Laura and I would like to challenge you guys to do is to pick one piece of intentional self-care that you can commit to doing tonight, and if possible, even sort of 3 days in a row, because then it starts to become part of your routine or your ritual. But really reflect on, what has this week been like, and what is something that would be a reward or a treat, or that would help refuel you as we move into the weekend and in the week ahead as well. So if everybody can kind of reflect on that and try to think of something right now that would help you, and stick to it. Make that decision that you're going to do it, and then do it.
I'm looking for a quote that I sent Melissa earlier today. It was something I heard on the CBC from a doctor they were interviewing on The Current, and she was talking about the impact of change, and this is a massive change on all of us, and how, and given this type of change, we're experiencing change very rapidly, day to day, minute to minute sometimes, and how that can be kind of arbitrary and frustrating. And she wanted to remind everybody that is to acknowledge the change, acknowledge that it's frustrating, but also to be aware that with every change we learn something, and when we learn something, we're moving towards adapting and doing something better. And I think one of the things, like last week, we didn't have the answers for students. When classes were starting, are there going to be online classes? How are people going to be able to pay their rent and all that stuff? And as we learn, we're getting those answers and we're getting better. And I think that was a really powerful quote that this woman shared in her, it was on CBC yesterday on The Current. So these are our references below. We accessed a lot of different places, Guard Me, Keep Me Safe, Mental Health Commission, The Working Mind, the University of Buffalo. So feel free to use all of those references and the worksheets that we're giving you. Natalie, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you so much for coming, and we encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about anything we said today, or any of the resort references, or how we use them at Niagara College. And we hope everyone is looking after themselves.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Laura and Natalie. Just before we wrap up here, I just wanted to, this is one of the resources that is in the reference guide that Natalie and Laura put together. So these are some additional resources. Keep Me Safe by Guard Me. There is a free webinar recording available at this link, so you can click on that. And just so you all know, at the end of this presentation, before the end of today, you will receive a follow-up message that will include the recording of this presentation presentation along with a link to a Google Drive. And in that Google Drive, you will find one resource that is from Keep Me Safe, Guard Me. So it's basically the PDF version of the PowerPoint they presented. And this is geared towards students. And so I would like to know, for those of you that are still on the line, how many of you would like us to prepare a webinar very much centered around students? If you would like that, please just write yes in the question box so we can gauge the interest for a webinar such as this, but really focused for students. So something that you could send the link to your students for them to attend, or that you could share the recording. Of course, you could share today's recording. I think there's tons of useful information for your students is this as well. So just give me an idea of what you're thinking by just responding in that question box. Okay, I see a lot of yeses. Okay, perfect. So we'll move ahead with that, and probably we'll tentatively book that in. Probably not next week because it's already Friday. So maybe the week after we'll partner up with GuardMe and hopefully some other partners and deliver something that's very much focused on students, and maybe even opening the line for students to, kind of a forum that we had today where people can just share best practices or techniques that they're using to manage their these stressful times. So keep an eye on our webinar events. You'll see when we book that in, it'll be on the events section of our webinar. And also remember that in our archive, there are already a list of webinars that we've been offering for free: decision making in times of crisis, intercultural competencies in times of crisis as well, refining our intercultural competencies. So those are two of other free webinars that are available in our archive. So you've got the link right there. And so I want to thank you, Laura and Natalie, for taking the time to put this presentation together and for delivering this presentation today. We really, really appreciate your contribution and your time. We are all really pressed for time, and we really appreciate you being here today and sharing all of this information with us. I'm sure that, at least for myself, I can speak personally, is very, very useful, and I'm sure it is for a lot of people that were on the line today. Feel free to share the webinar recording with colleagues and students if you would like. And also, please take a moment. Once we close off this webinar, there's going to be just a 5-question survey just about how we can improve our webinars, and also other information that you would like to get from CBIE webinars. So just take a moment to fill that out, and then we can respond accordingly. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just contact us at learning@cbie.ca, and we'll gladly refer you back to Laura and Natalie if you've got any questions directly for them. And that's it for today. So thanks again for taking part and joining us. And until next time, please take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you for attending.